few months back we asked the question, will there be a Dark Souls 4? And we came to the conclusion after looking at some evidence that the likelihood of that is no, there isn't going to be a Dark Souls 4. But, hold on. I did some more digging recently and came to the conclusion that actually Dark Souls 4 might be a thing sooner than we thought. And before we get going, I know FromSoft are working on a Souls-esque game, but I'm referring to a game that's literally Dark Souls. So instead of looking at this from the eyes of a gamer, I'm gonna look at this from the eyes of a business. Let's look at this. Bandai Namco, as many of you know, publishes Dark Souls to the Western market, and From Software, the creators of Dark Souls, self-publishes the game in Japan. But did you know Bandai Namco actually owns the Dark Souls trademark, and From Software owns the intellectual property? It's not too uncommon for this type of thing to happen. This allows Bandai to sell products with the Dark Souls assets and logo to create great gaming gems like Slashy Souls whilst all being perfectly legal. But what does this mean for the games? Well, to put it in basic terms, neither companies can make a game called Dark Souls without the other's consent. Whilst both companies have a contract with each other, both parties need to be on board, and we all know Hidetaka Miyazaki said he was done with Dark Souls. Emphasis on the he. Now let's look at how involved he was with the games after Dark Souls 1. With Dark Souls 2, as many of you know, it wasn't directed by him, but two individuals, Tomohiro Shiburu and Yui Taramara. Miyazaki had very little to do with it until he reviewed the progress of the game, said it was crap, told them to start again. There's probably more to that story, but we'll move on. Then, for Scholar of the First Sin, he acted as a supervisor, making sure the game was semi-decent, but again didn't really involve himself too much, as he was a little busy at the time with a game called Bloodborne. That brings me to my next bit. Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne were in development before Dark Souls 2 was even released. The studio was split yet again, and Dark Souls 3 was directed by Isamu Okano and Yui Taramara, who, by the way, also directed one of the worst rated Xbox 360 games ever. There's a joke in here somewhere, but yeah. They initially directed Dark Souls 3 anyway. Before Bloodborne was just about to be launched in March, Miyazaki returned to the helm of directing on Dark Souls 3. So a year had gone by on Dark Souls 3's development without our beloved director overseeing the project. Want to know the only reason Hidetaka Miyazaki came back to direct Dark Souls 3? Miyazaki said that Bloodborne's limitations made him want to return to the Souls series. So boom, we've got our director back. Then when Dark Souls 3 was nearing its release, we hear that you are done with Dark Souls and this is a turning point for the franchise. Well, gee willikers, Miyazaki, a couple of months ago prior, you said you wanted to go back to the Souls series. Oh, wait, you also said that if a section of your studio wanted to make a new Dark Souls game, which technically they've already been doing that since 2012, then you'd be okay with that? Oh, well, I guess nothing has changed then. So that's one point for another Dark Souls being created, and we already know that From are working on another Souls-esque game like I said, which is awesome and I can't wait. I for one love Bloodborne, so I'm eagerly awaiting that. But let's look at another concept that most likely plays a huge part in whether or not there'll be another Dark Souls game called Dark Souls and not some spin-off like Bloodborne was, and that is money. Now Bandai Namco not only publish Dark Souls, they do an array of other things, software publishing, in-house game creation and stuff like that. But with that said, since the release of Dark Souls 1 in 2011, the company's gross profit increased over the next 2 years by $600 million, the largest growth the company has ever been through. Since 2012, however, Bandai Namco, while still making a profit, have been slowly declining in gross profit throughout each fiscal year, with the most sought after IP across all of Bandai Namco's business segments since Dark Souls 1 was Mobile Suit Gundam, which earned 78.6 billion yen in revenue, more than Dragon Ball, which was 34.9 billion, and Yokai, which was 32.9 billion combined. Now, here comes 2016. With the way the projection was looking, Bandai Namco was looking at another year of slowly declining, with revenue up 2% and profits down 9% on average throughout the years. Then Dark Souls 3 released, just before the accounting period expired and bolstered a $200 million increase in profits, shipping over 3 million copies within its first week, and increasing Bandai Namco's profit margin for the first time in 4 years. Not only that, but Bandai Namco created a license agreement with Steamforged Games to greenlight a Dark Souls board game. Now, this license agreement could be a one-off license purchase or a royalty license where Bandai would receive a cut of the income from said board game. Now, a royalty license of an intellectual property normally is around 6 to 10% of the profits made, but we do not know the specifics of their contract agreement. The board game reached £3.7 million on its Kickstarter page, and it looks pretty good. But with that said, you know that little niche game that we all know and love? Well, that niche game ain't so niche anymore. On the PC alone, Dark Souls 3 sold more than Call of Duty Advanced Warfare and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare combined. Dark Souls is no longer a small franchise, and I'll wager since its existence it never was. If Bandai are a smart business, they will use the franchise's popularity and maintain their profit margins climb. But the franchise is so popular, with so many die-hard fans, it bolsters the question, do we want another one? I'll leave that question to you guys, and with that said, take care everybody, be good to one another, and have a great day.